What does it take to create a highly engaged community of change makers? Our guest today is Maruxa Murphy. She is an award-winning community experience designer, strategist, and entrepreneur. And she has transformed communities in person and online to become movements from 10,000 members to over 1 million members. She is bringing humanity back to virtual and hybrid community environments. And she has consulted for Facebook, Kajabi, Netflix, and more. And we're really excited to have her here today. Maruxa, welcome to Leaders Transformation.
Nicole, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad to have you here. And the only reason why we're here is because of Heather Pierce Campbell. And I want to do a shout out to her. She has a podcast called Guts, Grit, and Great Business. And she was actually a guest on this show in 2017, which seems like forever ago, in episode 151. And we talked about how to legally protect your business. And that's where I kind of got to know her. And then we've done some masterminding together. And I've been on her show, and she's been a huge we're a supporter of this show. And so, Heather, thank you so much. We love you and we appreciate you for making this introduction. So, yeah.
Very much so. She's an amazing person. Glad that she was able to connect us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's dive in and talk about community building. Why is it such a challenge? I mean, we're all humans. We are in relationships. We're born to be in relationships. Why is it so hard to build community?
Oh my gosh, I think we overcomplicate it. I think that's really it.
True.
I think, I actually was in this really beautiful conversation yesterday. I think this highlights it exactly from my own personal perspective and as to what's been happening in my own life. A former client of mine came to me. She's built this incredible community. I can't say too much else because of what I'll share with you in a moment. And she's built this amazing community that at this point, the Smithsonian is interested in understanding how she designed this community. I've been an advisor with her over the last 4 years. And as it happens, especially over a long period of time, we might have initially worked as colleagues, but now at this point, we're becoming deeper friends and having a deeper friendship. And so I'm watching her and her expansion, as an advisor, it's such an honor to be a part of experiences where we work with I get to work with people that have such beautiful, powerful, amazing vision for how they want to create impact in the larger society in some way. And yet at the same time, because we're business folk, right? We overcomplicate it. We try to get so into the weeds and the details of the return on investment. What are the metrics saying? That sometimes we miss out on the humaning together, the being human. But the irony of it all is that it's being human together that leads to more profitability.
So talk a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll share this a little bit more in this story of how it impacted me yesterday in a conversation I had with her. She's in the process right now because the community that she's created has been something that has been so precious, honestly precious. The first time she told me about what she started to build during the pandemic, I had tears in my eyes because I saw the humanness that she wanted to bring to the room. And over these last 4 years, it's grown and it's grown and it's grown and it's now a movement, Nicole. Like it is an actual movement that's shifting the lives and the conversations and the voices of women that are often underserved, undersupported, underheard, not heard very often. And to the point where like the Smithsonian's interested, large organizations, large media conglomerates are now wanting her voice into their media experience because of what she's creating. And so over the last couple of years, her mind has just been like so present with all the numbers and how do we make this work and how do we scale it, that could have been very easy for her to have just gone and made this like commercialized experience, which was once so beautiful and so precious, and the reason it's grown in the way in which it has. So she came to me yesterday and she was sharing with me this last couple of years journey that she's been on. And as I've been on my journey, the last couple of years, she was like, I think I got this. I think I'm good for now. Like I can go. And then she's had this like experience of like larger organizations wanting to commercialize what she's been building in a way that just didn't feel fully aligned to her. So yesterday was a conversation of kind of like a reunion of sorts, of reconnecting and saying, hey, how are you? And she said, this is, this is what's been happening. She's like, and you know what? It's made me realize I can actually do all the things that they are asking me to do, but I can do it from the place that feels so aligned to me. And Maruxa, I want you to play with me in this. Can we be playful and experiment with this model of media together in a way that actually returns us back to connection instead of commercialization? And as she said that, something in me, Nicole, just I just melted for a minute there. I had tears. I was like, I just thank you so much. Like what? Like because I'm human too, right? I'm in the business of building community, but it is so easy. It is so easy for me, for all of us who tend to want to grow larger companies, to just forget the human again, the heartbeats in the room. That's where the simplicity is. If we focus and we stay focused into the heartbeats in the room, into the simplicity of listening to each other's voices, and recognize that your curiosity may not be the same curiosities that I have, but we're both curious. We know that feeling. We know the feeling of anger. We know the feeling of love. We know the feeling of desire. We know the feeling of anxiety, right? We know we all, in all of our own unique bodies, have the same impact. There's a similar impact in each of us when we imagine what those feelings are like. And that's what it means to be human and bring humanness back. And really land in that. And that's why I think we get overly like annoyed with building community or like trying to figure it out. It's like a puzzle. But the truth is, if we just gave ourselves a permission to just go simple, what else could happen? All of the infrastructure happens when we first really align first and foremost into our vision, our values, and then the voice that we bring to the conversation. And once we have those in place and we're confidently like grounded in that, then we can add more structure that then supports the foundation that has really led the whole reason for gathering in the first place.
Well, you bring up a really good point, because I think a lot of organizations, not just the content creators, entrepreneur space, but even like corporate, where they put so often, which is the complaint that a lot of people have, is they put the structure in front, and the even like the profit and all of the things, the purpose, the so-called purpose of the business is what they see it as, is this business has to make profit, and that's the number one goal, which I've always argued that that's not actually the number one goal of a business. But anyway, that being like putting that first, and then the people are meant to support that, as opposed to what you're saying is it's actually the other way around. I was just reading a book by a gentleman who has been on this show, Gary Harps, and he talks about organizations building large organizations and the different things that as a leader you need to take into consideration. And one of the things he talks about is the growth. As you grow, your lines of communication, your integration, and your alignment starts to diminish because there's less connection, there's less community. That's what you're talking about. It's like we forget that we're actually all human beings doing this. And it's so easy. It is actually so easy to do, because it's almost like I don't have to think about all of those soft and mushy things. If I'm on a stage and I'm speaking to an audience, it's easier for me to think through my content and deliver the content than it is to recognize that in the room there's a lot of things going on. Some people are sleepy and checking out, some people are talking, whatever's going on in the room. I don't want to deal with that. Or maybe somebody's feeling anxious, or maybe somebody doesn't agree with what I'm saying.
Right. Exactly. It's so much easier to just compartmentalize and say, I'm just doing my job, right? We're in a time and a place, though, in our world where we as consumers have a higher expectation for how we hold the people that are influencing us, right? We see it all the time, right? So-and-so is being called out because of their unethical behavior in XYZ. This person, made a choice and it's blasted across the media, right? And while that is, and because that's the case, because that is the case, can I speak today? But because that's the case, what we're also finding is that we as leaders can either match that and really invite ourselves to be the leaders that we say we want to create change in the world, or not. But we as consumers are creating this demand, this culture shift within ourselves for that to be the norm, for that to have a higher ethical standard of how we do business, how we do life, and bring that conversation to the forefront,
Yeah.
And so, you mentioned, a lot of companies we're in the conversation around, profitability is the number one driver. What I always invite my clients to start to pay attention to is, what if we saw business as an opportunity for us to shift units of transformation
Yes. Yes.
instead of units of monetary value? Transformation is the game that we're all playing right now, and we get to start to claim that. I heard it was back in 2015. I heard a podcast interview. I think it was a conversation between Tony Robbins and of course, I'm forgetting her name, the former CEO of SoulCycle. And SoulCycle, do you know much about SoulCycle, Nicole?
Not a lot. No.
Okay, so SoulCycle, it's this organization. It started with two women in New York, in New York City, I believe, in Manhattan. And they loved to cycle. They wanted to start inviting other women to their cycling classes. And they were very inspirational. They were very much just like, it wasn't just like, let's get on a bike and cycle together. It was very much like poured with, inspiration, love, community. And in the interview with Tony Robbins, she says, everyone thinks we're in the business of cycling, but the truth of the matter is we're actually in the business of transformation.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that in 2015. This is before community, like especially online communities were really a thing, to the level that they are now. But my mind has been there. I've been creating online communities since 2009, and I've been building communities since 2000. You know, when she said that, something lit up in me. It was like, oh my gosh, here we are. This is the beautiful design of what we create in business. Should we so choose to allow ourselves? It's not about the widget. It's not about the cycling in her case, or the consulting, or the, Stanley Cup manufacturing. I have one right here beside me, right? It's not about that. It's about the transformation that's being created because of the work that we choose to be in.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah, and it's about the people that are creating those transformations. I was it yesterday? I was talking to somebody, and I just had this thought. We were dialoguing back and forth, and being a faith-based person, we were kind of dialoguing about what it means to have a kingdom business. And I said, God doesn't care how big your business is. He cares about, or what you sell. I mean, to an extent, right? I mean, and I say that because, some things can be hurtful and harmful. That's not what we're talking about. But generally speaking, it's not about those things. It's about the people in those organizations. It's about every single human being and who they are and what they're here for, like that transformation that's happening within each of us, and being in the business of transformation, leaders of transformation. I get a lot of times people will say, I want to be on your show, and I was poor and I'm rich and I make all this money doing all these things. And I'm like, that's fantastic, because it is a transformation.
right.
My question is always, how are you creating transformation and facilitating transformation in others? That's really what this is about. Because yes, we've talked about digital transformation and business transformation and so forth. But again, it always comes back to the reason why that's valuable is because of the impact that it has on a human being or millions of human beings.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's good.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk about how we cultivate this community. Remember how to, in some cases, is like remember that we're actually human and cultivate this community culture.
I love this question. So I think there's a couple of things here that we can dive into. I'll start with an analogy, the analogy of a home, right? Because as a community experience designer and an architect of community experiences, and how people gather, um, I love architecture. My father was an architect for most of his life, so I'm in this world a lot, and I think of a home. So imagine right now, Nicole, like you came to me, you're like, Maruxa, okay, have this dream home in mind. And I would love to have you as my architect to make this dream home come to life, to create the blueprint, create the whole plan for this home. And so I'd ask you a lot of questions. And first and foremost, I would ask you something to the effect of, okay, so what do you want this home to evoke for you? What do you want this home like in terms of what do you want it to feel? Who's going to be living in this home with you? Right? What is this home? What is its utilization? Where are we going to where do you naturally I remember my dad would ask these questions when I was his 5-year-old assistant. He would ask questions like, where would you naturally like, or how would you naturally like to wake up? Do you want to wake up to the sunrise, or do you want to have it like a nice dark cave? So he's thinking in his mind, like, how are the rooms situated, right? Same thing when it comes to community. We oftentimes think of a really incredible vision of gathering people, and then we go straight to doing things that we think will make it happen. But like a home, if you don't put the right foundation in place, the right plan in place, then what happens oftentimes is we end up building a home that doesn't serve our needs, right? Or we do the thing that most folks do, which is like, oh my gosh, I have a vision. Okay, let's put up two stick, there are 4 sticks on into the dirt and put a roof on top, and we have a home. Yay, but there's not a lot of intentionality thought through. What I like to do instead is I like to have us really take a deep dive, go slow to grow fast, take a deep dive into what is this home, who is it serving in terms of your community, so that the minute that somebody knocks on the door of that home and wants to open, and you open the door, they feel welcomed. Right now, a lot of times community is you're bringing them into a home that is half built, and then you open the door and they're standing there in the foyer and there's nobody to direct them as to where to go next, right? When they're coming to visit, or maybe you're
Yeah,
having
it's
like
true.
house party. We have a whole bunch of us sitting in the foyer going, wow, this is this is nice foyer. Okay. But
Or they're
after a
trying
while,
to, or they're trying to sell you the next thing, the upsell, and it's like this transaction. It goes from transaction to transaction to transaction. It's like, can I just be
yeah,
here?
can I just be here?
Yeah,
Exactly. And also, wouldn't you like, I would love to feel welcomed. Like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, do you have anything to drink? Like let's go to the kitchen. I'm going to show you around here. Hey, have you met Joe, Carrie? You're introducing people. Like there's more people in the, like, let's say you're having a house party or something. You've got people and you can introduce them. You can show them around your space. And, maybe, right, when the time is right, they can head on outside because you have a nice fire pit in the backyard and you've got s'mores that are there roasting by the fire pit ready for them, right? And maybe that's like you taking them down into an offer into another opportunity to work with you. But that doesn't just naturally happen immediately, right?
yeah.
We're building that know, like, and trust within the container of a home that's well built, well intentioned, to be able to hold all these amazing humans. So there's a format or formula, and if the folks are here with us, they can definitely write it down. I can also give access to this diagram if that supports them later. But it's what I call the transformed community paradigm. And the transformed community paradigm is basically, instead of going straight from, I have a vision, here's my voice, here's some of my values, all the way to building and activating a community, we actually do that slow down to grow fast process. And we actually take time. And in the visual, you'd be able to see, like, it kind of looks like this, like, pyramidal shape. And the bottom is really focusing and deepening into what does that mean to have your voice in this space? Like, who are you really? What do you really stand for? What is it that you want to be known for in your space, right? How do you want to be known for that? Like, what is that voice? What is the energy around that voice? It's looking at a lot of like the brand experience of your company. Also paying attention to your vision, right? Is this a community that's there to invite prospects to get to know one another or understand, the topic that you're hosting the party around a little bit better? And then we want to also understand, and so that vision is going to be important, right? So we're going to be using that vision as a way to really ground into the ultimate intention. So if it's for prospects to get to know you better, fantastic, right? We have a whole different strategy there than if it's a community of members who've been investing with you for years, right?
Yeah.
Totally different feel, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe it could be also a group of folks that are your colleagues that you really enjoy being around and you all want to support each other and up level together. Totally different experience again. So knowing that intention and that vision is going to be critical. And then understanding your values, right? So I would imagine, Nicole, that if you had a community and I had a community, let's say around community building, they would feel so different. And neither would be better or worse. It would just be different because, and let's say they were both for prospects, right? And they were both like similar voice vibe, because we talk about transformation. Both of us talk about transformation a lot and we work with leaders. So similar in that, but maybe our values or the way in which we show up for them would look different based on those values, right?
Yeah.
That's part of what makes this experience so unique to you versus to anybody else that's in your space, in your industry, is what are those values? What are those convictions? What are those things that are really grounded in? And so when somebody's looking for support around community, they might go to you and be like, oh my gosh, Nicole is the person I want to work with because she thinks this way. She's coming from this energy, right? And this way of showing up for it. And Maruxa thinks this way, right? So there's really more for everybody because we all are creating community in the way it feels like our fingerprints are attached to it, which is really quite amazing.
Yeah.
From there, then we go into what I call the experiential value. Experiential value is really where we're starting to look at culture design, identity design. How do people become a part of a culture? And a lot of businesses want to skip this because it feels foreign. They have no culture. How do we build culture? So we want to spend some time really thinking through, well, what does this community stand for? If we were going to create a statement of how we be in the world, what does the statement look like? Can we have a message that we all say together? And ultimately, this experiential value piece, this culture piece allows us to now create rituals, to create and rituals could look like, okay, every Wednesday we have a wine down Wednesday and we all have a glass of wine on Zoom together. It could be, every Friday we do this really fun thing. Or it could also be things like, hey, you know what? We know in this particular, I have a community of a woman who is supporting families in hospice, who have gone through, or families, I'm sorry, not families, other therapists who are hospice therapists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody works with families. And so every Friday, it's kind of decompression Friday, right? So they're all giving themselves a moment to just be present with each other. And it's usually an opportunity to just kind of like let a little bit of that pressure valve out.
Yeah.
And she knows that community really well. That's a very much needed part of their own self-care process, right? So you want to build that culture, that identity based on the fingerprint that's wanting to be created for that community. From there, then we start looking at what I call profit paths. And profit paths are really fun. Profit paths are basically it's something I created back in 2020 after having built my first 100 communities. I realized I had built my first 100 communities with my two bare hands and my intuition and my gut checks, right? Like going back to what we are talking about, like it's actually potentially simpler than we think sometimes. I was leaning into my 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 thermometer, if you will, on like how people relate, how we can connect better, to build my first 100 communities. However, there was something interesting about the communities I was building, that not only were they growing in size, many of them, but they were also growing in revenue. And so in 2020, because of the pandemic, I made the choice to give everything away for free, workshops and through speaking engagements and things like that, as best as I could, to get more people understanding how to build community intentionally. And what that did is I had a massive influx of potential new clients, but every one of them had a different community. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I started to actually systemize what I was doing and started to look at, okay, out of the first 100 communities we built, what made the winners the winners? What made the ones that didn't, succeed as well? Why? What was the reasoning? And what popped through from all of that is that from the winners, we're always one of 5 profit pathways to help design out what that community could look like. So for example, it was super interesting. So for example, 3 of them are designed around more communities that are there to build leads and bring those leads into sales conversations or into the next step in the cycle with the client. 2 of them are very much for retention models and to really deepen that know, like, and trust with your members as well. So depending on what I heard in the vision statements, right, and how we want to build that culture, then I could also start to be aligned into, okay, well, you are saying, what I'm hearing is you're looking to increase your client base and you really love this topic of Polish cooking. And, and because of that, maybe we can have a Polish cooking community that's aligned into your blah, 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 whatever, right? We would just have so much fun. But the backbone of that might be an engaged community, which is an engaged community is like a long-term relationship building community that's often free for somebody who's interested in that particular topic, that ultimately gives them an opportunity to hold your hand with you into a paid experience further down the line in their own timing, in their own pace, instead of just, like you said earlier, offering them something next, like, oh, and let me throw this at you. Okay, how about this one? It's like, what is happening right now? So that's in a nutshell, what an engaged community could look like. Now, if a member came to me or a client came to me and said, Maruxa, I really want to focus more on the community after they've already invested. And, but I also see the value of having community prior to the investment, but I don't want it to necessarily be like I'm in relationship with somebody that's been on, in my audience for 6 months, a year. I just really want to get the right people at the right time, in a free experience and then move them into. Then we have different model opportunities there as well. So you have an Excite model for that front end, lead generation community. It's what I call the small but mighty win. We give them a small but mighty win for a short amount of time. And then we invite them into a program, let's say. And that could look like a workshop. It could look like a challenge. It could look like a live event, a virtual experience that's built around a small but mighty transformation that we want to create. And then ultimately into a program or a product that has the support on the back end for people who are investing longer term in a more educate community model, for example, right? So I'm just kind of giving you some examples of how that might look in the profit path process. And then from there, once we have that, then we look at our offers. Like, what are those offers that are super, yes, we want to bring these types of offers to these people because of and gather them together in community. And then once we have all those things in place, then we go to activating that community and then building that community, right? And then really measuring our KPIs as to, what is our engagement? Like, we want to make sure we're paying attention to engagement, our sales, our impact. Who are they impacting because they're in community? And what's that impact doing in the other people's lives is what I call the return on impact process. And we pay attention to that under activation. So I know I've been talking a lot, but basically that's the model that we would want to build around to move us back into community in a way that's really, really intentional and aligned with our companies.
Well, and I love, and thank you for going through all of that. I love the intentionality to it. And it makes me think of a lot of times where these ads, it's like, write this book in the next, 10 hours, or build this
Mm,
community. You can have a community built in the next 7 days or whatever. And it's so we're almost conditioned to the microwave approach to it, right? It's like throw it in there, get something out quick, versus taking the time, which is what you're doing, and that's what you get paid for, is you know, to walk through the process. So once you build it, that house in the analogy that you're talking about, you don't have to go and build it again. Like it's like done. Now I'm sure that at some point you probably have worked with communities where they start to pivot or they start to add, and maybe that's where also we can talk about that, is the complexity of how do you even maintain the integrity of the community as you started, because
mhm.
you evolve, your customers evolve, and
Correct.
consumers, whether they're paid customers or just people that are part of your community members, but they evolve too. How do you stay on mission with what the original intent was? Like we were talking about in the beginning, the business grows, there's more complexity,
Mhm.
we lose
Yeah,
sight of the people
right.
themselves.
Right. Such a good question. What I believe, I mean, and you hit it on the head already, is we need to be paying attention to the fact that humans are humaning. While we're trying to build a company, and we want this company to be this like, great, amazing, beacon for all things phenomenal, right? That's true. And also what's true is that humans human and they evolve. And so the dance that we get to play in, and this is, I see it over and over again. This is why young companies who are much more agile are able to take over large institutions quickly that have been staples, behemoths in their industry for potentially centuries, some of them, for centuries, right? It's because the agility and the ability for us to have our ears to the ground and to be able to be present with our people allows us to provide better solutions to those people that we're serving. So that's really a big part of the gift is giving ourselves that knowing that like, hey, things might shift. So, but one of the things that you can be confident in is that once you understand that, let's say this model, the transformed community paradigm model, once you know it, and my vision is always I want to teach people how to fish so they're never dependent on Maruxa Murphy or anybody else. That once you know how to fish, you become so much more capable of being able to be present with yourself, be present with your in practicing that listening, practice listening with your people that you serve and with your teams so that we can really begin to take a home and renovate if we need to every so often, you know?
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
conversation still becomes really fresh and the conversation feels respectful, it feels loving. It doesn't feel like I'm pushing this on you in any way
Yeah.
because that there is that foundation as part of the culture building to have an open heart, an open mind, and open ears to hear, to be able to see where are we going from here? What is this data showing us? How can we use this data for our own good? I truly believe that everything is here for us. Everything is here for us. And the lessons that we get to learn from them, should we choose to, um, are it's almost like an embrace from, the universe or above or wherever, to continue to support us to move forward and evolve
Yeah.
gracefully if we
Yeah.
so choose.
I love this. I love this. And there's so much more depth to this conversation that we could go into. Um, just for the sake of time, where do people find out more? You mentioned about that diagram, and I'd love for that. We
Sure.
can add that to the show notes. Where do people find out more about this? I know you have a podcast and you have Revolutionaries Insider Club and all this. So tell us a little bit more about the next steps for people who want more
Great.
information.
Yeah. So if people want access to that diagram and into more community tips and strategies, there's really one place that I am kind of giving it my all right now, and that is our newsletter. It's, the Insiders Club. So you just go to revolutionarycommunities.com and it's right there, right in front of you. Say, I can sign up, and you'll get access to those to the transformed community paradigm model, so you can take a look at that. And then every week I send strategies and tips on how to continue to deepen connection and to build community. If folks want to get directly in touch with me, the best possible way to do that is LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. So linkedin.com, look up Maruxa Murphy. And yeah, and I'd love to have a conversation with you and engage with you in some of our content that we share there, that my team shares on my behalf there. But I'm the one in the DMs. So, feel free to reach out to me directly and connect with me that way.
Awesome. Maruxa, thank you so much. And I appreciate you even saying that you're in the DMs, because a lot of times people go, well, let me just hire somebody else and they'll do all of it and they pretend to be me. And
Yeah.
I get the efficiency of that. But again, the humanness of actually being able to talk to the person that you're intending to talk to is really simple. Hello. It's not that complicated. I really want to know that I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
And and not necessarily obvious in this day and age. But thank you so much. I appreciate all of this. This is going to be one of those episodes that I'm going to go back and listen to again and really think through. I'm looking forward to seeing that diagram, and so that I can be looking at that as well as I'm developing things going forward. So thank you for that. And I always say leaders of transformation take action. So everyone that is listening and watching out there, we all have community. We all build community, whether you are an online, entrepreneur, or whether you work at a company. We're all part of a community and or are all building a community with family, friends, all of that. And so we can all learn from this on how to do community and be in community more effectively. And so I encourage you to take something that you heard here today and say, how can I apply that to my relationships and my humanness today, tomorrow, next week, to stop and check in. So often, like even just going down the hallways, in an office building or on the street, and we say, hey, how are you? And we don't wait for the answer. It's like a thing we do. And it's like, just for fun is literally stop. And when you ask somebody, you say, hey, how are you? Actually wait for an answer. And if they don't say an answer, which I've done this, and they don't say, anything, maybe it's just saying, hey, like repeat yourself and say, no, I really do want to know, how are you? And be willing to listen to somebody. I mean, that's such a gift. It's just to be able to listen to somebody. Or, there's so many different tips from what Maruxa shared here today. I encourage you to take action on something, apply it. Transformation happens when we take action. And we'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com. You can find us there. And I do respond to all the emails that are coming through with questions and so forth. And because that's important. I want to hear what people are asking and what's important and how we can support you better in what you're doing. And also, of course, social media, you can follow us on social as well. And we just appreciate you being here. And we look forward to seeing you next week on another episode of the Leaders of Transformation.